small. my
Sorry.
my oh, that's okay. My dad was a pastor in that town, and my parents truly loved the Lord, and I think kind of did their best to show us kind of what a passionate life looked like to love the Lord. But I think by nature of where we lived, and probably by nature of some things my parents didn't know or understand, there was a lot that I think I was really naive to in my kind of growing up years. But I went off to college, and there I really started traveling a lot internationally, doing mission trips and study abroad and that kind of thing. And I think in that season, the Lord just opened my eyes and my heart just to the world, and a much greater perspective of how other people live. And I got married actually straight out of college. My husband was a Marine, and we were stationed multiple places, and ended up getting my master's degree in international relations and working at a university with international students. And I kind of oversaw their recruitment of international students. So I traveled really extensively with that, and loved a lot of things about that. And life was good until it wasn't. And in that season, my marriage essentially fell apart, and it was beyond devastating. I think in our world, our culture, divorce has become somewhat normalized, and I think in that we've lost a little bit of the reality of what it really is, and it's a death. And for someone who kind of grew up with these expectations, I think of, if I do XYZ, then my life will look a certain way. And I think I held that from that was my biblical framework. And the reality is that's just not true. That's not actually what the Bible says. I mean, the Lord promises to be with us when hard things come. But it was an extremely dark season in my life, and really a crisis of faith, I would say, in some ways. But then ultimately became this season in which the Lord was by far the most real that he's ever been to me. I mean, I have very vivid memories of being on my bathroom floor and just almost feeling his breath with just the nearness of him in that season. So kind of as he was healing my heart and working through all of that, I knew that he was kind of before I was planning to move. So before I transitioned into whatever the next step was professionally, I felt like he was calling me into a season of just kind of a longer stint of being abroad. And I didn't know for sure what that was going to look like, but because of everything that I had gone through, I was just really, really drawn to women who are hurting. And I was at a church service, and I heard someone talking about trafficking. And I think at that point, because of my international travel, I was aware of it, but on a very kind of distant perspective. I didn't know, obviously, the depths of it. So I ended up kind of going through the interview process and moving to the Dominican Republic. And I lived there for a year, working in a safe house with women who had been trafficked. And that was really a season of so much learning and growth, and really just a lot of joy, honestly, just being with them. And then kind of fast forward, I moved after that year, came back to the States and moved to Atlanta, where I live now, and worked in a safe house for 2 years as a case manager for women coming out of prostitution. And then from there, I ended up transitioning to working with Wellspring International, which is how Arthur and Sandra and I kind of have a relationship. And I was there for 5 years. And then from there, our team has since launched another nonprofit called Third Ladder, all working within the humanitarian realm. since I've been in Atlanta, I have, as Arthur mentioned, met my husband. And now we have a 3-year-old little girl, Grace, who is just the light of our lives. So that's a little bit about me just personally and kind of how I got into this line of work. Um, I have a video that I'm going to show, but before I do that, I just wanted to lay a really just kind of basic um, groundwork for what trafficking is. Um, so the official definition of trafficking, which you've probably heard before, may have heard before, is force, fraud, or coercion. But I have heard someone explain it once more like in basic terms as the exploitation of the vulnerable. And I actually think that that is just, to me, the most accurate description, because if I think of the women and children and men that I've met who have been trafficked, there's vulnerability there that someone has exploited. And whether that's vulnerability as a child and they've been sexually abused, which is a very common way that people end up kind of getting into trafficking, or it's an exploitation of lack of choices, lack of opportunities. So that is kind of a basic framework for what trafficking really means. Um, the video that I want to show you guys is from an organization that I really, really love. It's called Word Made Flesh. And my organization, Third Ladder, we provide grants, and Word Made Flesh is one of the organizations that we support. And so I've been with them multiple times in the brothels and just kind of seeing the work that they do. And the thing that I love the most about this organization is not just what they do, but really the way in which they do it. It started with a husband and wife just going and sitting in the brothels and building relationships with the women without the objective of trying to get them out. Obviously, that was their hope and goal, that one day these women would want to leave, but they really work from a place of just being present with them and being incarnational, like really just trying to embody Christ and just be with them. And that organization has grown, and now they do a lot of other things, but that's really the heartbeat behind what they do. And to me, from my experiences, I feel like that is really critical in this kind of realm. And I actually think that a lot of women can pick up on it if you're not genuinely just wanting to be with them versus wanting to kind of fix them or pull them out. So anyway, that's just something I want to point out about this organization. But I think whenever you guys are ready, Arthur, I think we can go ahead and start that video.
Hey, Rachel, just a quick follow-up to that. You're familiar
Yes.
with Naomi's experience with that missionary group that was going to go and fix them? And do you remember? You know which story I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you just because coming from that line of thinking, which has been dominated, dominating the evangelical world, and we're a Southern Baptist church, and so we send out a lot of missionaries with kind of that idea, and as maybe well-meaning as it is, there's a certain removal of dignity or something that comes with. Would you mind just sharing that a little bit, just so that story, you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I don't know that I know all the details of the story to be able to share the story, but I can kind of just expand even on what you're saying. And I think that I've seen that so many times, that oh goodness, that just both from an international context, where sometimes people come in well-meaning and it doesn't always actually help in the way that is hoped that it would help. But I also just think specifically with women in this field, um, because like I've heard people describe women in prostitution and trafficking as some of your best actresses, and they can pick up so quickly someone's intentions and if they're genuine or not. And what they're really longing for is for someone to welcome them and love them just for who they are. And so they can sense that if you're not, if your objective is just to be the savior to them, um, that, even if you put yourself in their shoes, no one likes to necessarily feel that like, oh, someone is better than me and they're going to save me. What we want is someone to connect with us. And that might look like kind of walking them through, a process that becomes getting them in a better place. But that kind of the way that it's approached, I think is a really important piece.
That's so helpful, even for ministry right here every day, isn't it? If just treating people
Yeah.
as is. And I think the comment from one missionary before they left America, and they told Rachel's friend and our friend, can't wait to go over there to be able to tell these girls, that they're sinning and that they're sinning against God, and we want to tell them the truth, and I think Naomi was just kind of like, whoa, that's not a great place to start, but you think you are
Yeah.
doing the right thing by upholding God's truth, in a certain propositional way,
Yeah.
which we do a lot of damage sometimes that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of put you back in the waiting room so we don't take the bandwidth and then we'll show the
Sure.
video and we'll come right back. And what's interesting, I don't know if you know this, but when Nathaniel got married, he used Sultisana as to provide the party favors, and so we had like 200 luggage tags that they made by to help that.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
Word Made Flesh.
forgot about that, but I remember being involved in all that. Yes.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
that's
that's cool.
amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll put you in and we'll come back.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's pause the recording if we can. And then this video is not, we're just gonna, it's just here because it's a private. Okay, Rachel, we just finished.
Okay. Um, I know that's a really heavy video. Um, I think at this point, Arthur, I would, if you want to ask any questions or if there's any even questions specifically to that video, I know there's a lot there and um, it can feel heavy. And I don't want to necessarily leave you guys in a place where you're just left with the heaviness, because I think that is the reality. But I hope that the other kind of piece that you saw in that video was the hope, and the hope that they are able to bring, but really just the hope of Christ, that is truly the only hope in a situation like that. But Arthur, I don't know if you have questions.
Yeah, thanks. And if anyone here has questions or a thought, feel free, and you can bring it up. But for me, you had a comment. I told you it felt like that's what I think hell's going to be like, and I cringed the whole time. Just seeing that these are real people being I felt terrible for the girls, and I felt terrible, like the guy, I forget his name, Andy or something, for the guys as well, to be so skewed, and to like Ravi would say, in God, in God's economy, we were to love people and use things, and we've got it the other way around, where we end up loving things and using people. And but then you said, yeah, and you totally got my sentiment, and yet in another certain way that I'm not familiar with, you said there was something so beautiful, and which was like, I had to think about it, because it just looks so evil. Like what's beautiful
Mhm.
about it? I don't know if you want to take it from there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So when we were talking about that, I was telling Arthur that, so I've been in, from that video, I've been in those brothels multiple times. And I was saying how there is this depth of heaviness there. But for me, there's also, it's like in some of the ways the most alive that I ever feel, because I'm just so confident that that is exactly where the Lord is. And it feels, in some ways, it feels like church to me, if that makes sense, or it feels like this is how church should feel. That we embody Jesus inside of us, and we get to go and be with others in these dark places. And I, I think it makes my faith come alive. And it's just, it's just exactly where I think that Jesus would be if he's physically on this earth. But I just think that's where he is. I think that's where his heart is drawn to, is in those spaces. I remember another organization that we support in Austria, and I was doing outreach with them on the streets as well. And it was really cold at night, and all the girls were just lined up on the side of the street, shivering in tiny, little outfits. And the organization would pull up in their van, and they would have hot chocolate for the girls. And in between clients, they would hop in the van, and get warmed up, and everyone, and the staff, was just loving on them and just asking them how they were doing, and just being with them. And I remember that exact same feeling, just being like, this is church to me. Like, this is where I feel like the Lord just is at home, so yeah, like, I think, again, to what you were saying, like, I think it, like, something like that video, like, it holds that, like, the depth of what sin looks like when we're given over to it completely. But I also just think that is where the hope lives as well. Does that kind of make sense, or answer that?
I think that's something to really think about, and it's very, very challenging. Um, and I wish we had a lot more time to kind of explore, even the foundation of why, to have a kind of a theology of what is exactly wrong with this. I think everybody here intuitively senses and knows within the makeup that we have that there's something very wrong with this. And yet
Mhm.
to put it into words and to kind of work through the idea itself to match what our feelings are. I think that's something that we're going to have to work on here, so we have the transformation by the renewing of our minds and how we think about this, but also
Yeah.
touching our senses. And so maybe that is not exactly for tonight, but if you have something to say, then please do as we go on. But I'm going to, and we have talked about that, but I'm going to just kind of move ahead a little bit and just ask, from your experience and perspective, and what it is you're trying to do personally, with out of darkness, and through third ladder, and who knows where the Lord will lead in the future. It
Sure.
just seems so hopeless. Are we making a difference? Is a difference being made? And what kind of difference are we talking about? And for some to hear, oh, you're going to just befriend them, and between their clients and everything, it just seems kind of like odd.
Right.
What's the kind of the method behind that madness per se, and what are you really trying to uphold and value, such that no matter who we come in contact with, whether it's someone caught in that situation or even a neighbor at school, what is it that you're really trying to capture there first?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, and I think that to be able to see someone the dignity that they hold, and that they are an image bearer of God, and to be able to see that. And I think many times in these cases, even when we talk about like befriending them, they often don't see that within themselves. So I think sometimes when you're starting with building that friendship, like you are showing them their worth, and that they are worthwhile, and that is the foundation that then you can build upon, if that makes sense. But I mean, this it is a field where the successes are not these vast numbers, but they are there. I think the average for a woman to actually get out, if she's trying to get out, they will often go back, because that's what they know. And just like with anything, sometimes it's easier to go back to what you know than it is to try to break into something new, especially when you have all of the trauma that goes with it. So typically it takes a woman 3 to 5 times before she actually can fully get out. But I mean, I personally know multiple women who, I mean, I can, like, literally faces are popping up in my head left and right as I say that, who were once in a trafficked situation, who are now working jobs in this field, doing similar type of work that I do, who are leading organizations, who are involved in their churches and in their communities. So there are those success stories, and even in Word Made Flesh, I just had a call with them earlier this week, and they have a program for kids, and it's specifically for kids whose moms are in prostitution. So they're trying to break some of those cycles. But now they have some of their older kids who are going into schools and doing awareness programs. And so to me, I was just like, that is like, not only is the cycle now like broken for them, but they are becoming advocates and leaders in this field, which is just incredible to me, um, so they're there. And I think for me personally, kind of to your question, someone had asked me once before in a really hard situation I was working on with a woman. They had said, like, do you still have hope for her? And I think like that is a question that that I've used a lot to almost like keep myself in check of like, can I still maintain hope for these women in this situation? And the answer is always yes. That just like in that video, then the line where she says, because I believe in what the Lord can do. I mean, that is what keeps me going in this too, is that I believe, and I've tasted and seen what the Lord can do. And it doesn't always happen. And that they're not always in that place of wanting that or being able to take it, or a wide range of circumstances. But that is the kind of the thing that keeps me going in it.
It sounds like there has to be a different mindset and mentality and a different way of evaluating what success is in Christian ministry and in our living our Christian lives, because I think what we're used to here is quantifying it, seeing results, being able to put it as a tabulation. And guys, as a coach, it's very much similar a lot of ways, where sometimes as coaches, you tabulate success by how many wins you have, how many playoff victories, how many championships, and that becomes kind of the mentality. In a Chinese culture like we have, performances of the uttermost value, and that's why we've had ex-TD'ers, and one of them comes to mind right away, whose mom was going to disown her if she wasn't going to be a doctor. I've seen others where if they had an A- or a B+, grounded, that terrible and whatever, and wrestling with that. But in the Christian world, and you mix that within our own culture, which we have our strengths and we have our shortcomings, but you mix that together, sometimes that can be kind of dangerous. And so, when I'm coaching my kids, on my teams, I'm really trying to fight for, and it's a battle within myself because I want to do really well, but I'm also preaching to them what real success is and what real victory is. I want them to be able to come off the court knowing that they have actually won, whether the score says so or not. But that takes a whole nother mentality, and it takes another way of thinking. And even for me to believe it, I can preach it, but for me to believe it, I have a lot of soul searching to do to test myself as to whether I really do believe it. And there's a fine, delicate balance. But when I'm listening to you, Rachel, I'm thinking, okay, scoreboard isn't always there. And
Yeah.
in ministry, oh, wait, you're a great evangelist because 4 people came to know the Lord this night based on your whatever you did. And this person,
Mhm.
nobody did, so you were more successful, you're better at and which is kind of all convoluted in a way. And I think what you're
Yeah.
saying is kind of like there's another way to think about this in terms of success, quote unquote, and what it is that we're to be. So could you speak to that as Christians and what kind of mindset we might have to start adopting and what kind of things we might have to put away if we're going to actually step into what the Lord might have in this arena? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it definitely makes sense. And I love that you're like pointing that out because I think it's just, yes. I mean, the successes, if you're wanting to look at it from like a quantifiable number, it's just not going to be there in the way that that one might hope it would be. And so I think that that's something that it is a heart shift. It's a heart shift and a mind shift, but I actually think that it's something that it's critical for this field. But I think that what you're pointing to is that it's actually critical, I think, for us as believers in general, that maybe we've wrongly convoluted the way the world looks at things and we've let that kind of steep into how we look at things in the Christian world. um you know, I want to read something to you, and it doesn't fully, I have it on my desk. And to me, this is a picture of the way that I think that the Lord looks at people and wants the church to be, but it goes against so much of our kind of thinking. So our thinking in like regards to success, but even just like our thinking and things being kind of proper and in their place. So it says, prisoners pen scriptures, whores are heroes, and every face resembles holiness. The feet of peasants are washed by the king, and law bows down to love. Outsiders are insiders, and the door is not open, but torn clean from its hinges. This is the house that God built. And I love that visual of that radical version of the Lord. And that even that song that was popular a few years ago that says the overwhelming reckless love of God. I would, every time I heard that song, I literally had that visual of him tearing through brothels, like just that like passionate love. Um, so yeah, but I do think it's a mind shift, it's a cultural shift, and it's something that I think that we just have to pray into and allow the Holy Spirit to do within us. Because I think it's our human nature to want to see those immediate successes, or to even to be able to tell those, but I think that it's something that we have to just, yeah, like allow the Lord to just do within us.
Yeah, that's the truth. We can share it, and then it's the Lord's timing and how He's going to work within our hearts. I have one more thing, just as something to consider. You shared earlier of that immense death and pain of
Mm.
your first marriage, and of those. And first of all, I thank you for being willing to vulnerably share that with us. Um, that's very. It means a lot in this particular context that we're in, because where we're in oftentimes in this church in particular, brokenness like that is not easily shared. It's not easily shared, and I don't think people necessarily have the space or the grace here to go there yet fully. We're trying to work towards it, but
Yeah.
I thank you for that. But I also see within the death that is there and other people who are able to connect and make a difference in dark places. It seems to me that there is something that oftentimes has gone on in their own lives that
Mhm.
makes them more, that the people realize, can sense that there's an understanding of my brokenness and a more willingness to trust and to connect with. It seems that through the ashes, so to speak,
Yeah.
now some, like you and Naomi and others, we know of that just have been through a really difficult time, but the Lord redeems it and makes a connection there. There's
Yeah.
brokenness here. We're just not quite ready to share it with each other yet. So then we kind of have a certain face and a certain thing, and thus we don't get too real, and we can't.
Yeah.
But I think if we're going to, there has to be a shift in that direction, or we have to. Someone has to start it off and be willing to go there. But I don't. I'm not exactly asking for a set answer, but just even within what I've said, is there any resonance or any way you can speak to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I've had actually a couple of different women that I've met, and within, a 5 to 10 minute conversation, them saying, like, what happened to you? And they can tell that that there's pain in my past too. And it's a point of connection. And I think that it's something that is really quite beautiful, actually, that the Lord does, as you just said, through our brokenness. But I think, kind of, when you're talking about people being, more closed off, we have to allow Him to do that through our brokenness, because really, we have choices with everything, right? Like in my circumstance, I could not share it. I could be bitter. I could hide it, feel shameful. But all of those things don't actually lead to freedom for me, nor do they open up opportunities for others to then feel that same freedom to share the ways that they are hurting or have been hurt or whatever it might be. So I think, um, yeah, I think it's something that the Lord just really can work through those spaces. And I think that grief and pain can be so hard. Um, but it stretches us. And in that stretching, I think there's just this room, this depth, there can become this depth of greater, I don't know what the right words are, love, or maybe greater just ability to empathize with people. And so I think it's pretty common, actually, to see people that have kind of chosen to go into these types of professions who have um, something in their past that has played a big role in kind of putting them where they are. There's the expression, the wounded healer, with essentially people who are, and we're all that to some degree, right? Like, we all have different things that we've been through. Um, but I think even for me, when you're talking about the culture and the community there, maybe not being as open to that. I mean, I think that was what made my experience hard too, was kind of coming from a very, uh, things seemed so put together in our home and in our church. And so for me to be the pastor's daughter and then to experience this, it just felt like such a fall. Um, but I think in allowing just the Lord to really minister to my own heart in that, and to recognize that's not the way He sees me, um, has given me, again, just like that ability, I think, to connect with others in that same way.
Wow. There's so much there. There's so much there. Man, And our time is running. I do have a question, but I'm going to open it up real quick and to see if any of our TD'ers have anything to share or ask at this time. Does anyone have anything for Rachel? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to bring the mic over. Would you mind coming over? This is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Rachel. My question is basically, how do you deal with like experiencing and hearing all these stories and just like sharing the trauma with them? And like, it's just, how do you deal with all the pain?
It's a really good question. I have a counselor. I've had a counselor for years as a regular part of my own kind of self-care practice in this work. I think for anyone to kind of do it and to have sustainability, you have to have really good self-care. So knowing what fills you up, boundaries in place of how to protect yourself and protect your time and protect your heart. But even earlier this week, I was talking with someone and she said, you can never forget, you can never let the second commandment override the first commandment. And so to always maintain, the first commandment being like, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second commandment of loving your neighbor as yourself. And she said, you can't let the second commandment become greater than the first. And I think that is actually so critical too, to maintaining, to be able to be in this for the long haul, is that there has to be that relationship with him, because that is what fills me back up. And it also, I have to have that relationship with the Holy Spirit to know kind of what is mine to work within, and what is he going to use someone else to do, because the need, and it can feel overwhelming and endless. And so it's kind of like keeping that perspective of like loving him and letting him show me where he wants me to work and what is not mine to do. So those are just a few things that I think have helped me. Practical things. I mean, I do Zumba. I make sure I like get time with my girlfriends, just like, things that are just fully life-giving to me, and not letting myself kind of drown in the heaviness.
Because there's so much need and hurt out there. I guess it would be very easy just to get overwhelmed by it all and just feel hopeless. Like there's,
Yeah.
That's such a wise thing. And a lot of the kids here actually, I mean, that's with your academics and things like that. That's just such a wise thing. And let me follow up Sarah's question then with, so Zumba things, that quote unquote, hey, but that's not spiritual. And the first commandment, do you mean by, okay, I got to be quiet, I got to be away from people, and I got to be praying all the time, reading the Bible alone, which of course is, I think, an essential, necessary component. But does that first commandment sometimes come in the context of the second?
Oh yeah. I think absolutely. Yeah. I think for me, I'm a really heavy like relational person. So I think getting time with other people. But I think for me, it's also just that mindset of like, what relationships, I can't always be the one pouring out. I need relationships that just feel like a mutual enjoyment, or people that are kind of pouring into me as well. And so being aware of that, but yes, I think definitely that second commandment, and enjoy too. I think finding just those things that are fun. I think the Lord wants us to have joy in our lives. So
You think? These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be made full. Right? That's what Jesus said to us. And wow, look at what lengths he went to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else who has maybe, yeah, Christina, can you come on up?
Hello.
Hi, Christina.
You said that like the average woman takes around 3 to 5 times to like get out of the brothel. So given that, how do you stay encouraged despite setbacks?
I mean, it's a good question. I think just knowing that it's her journey, and and encouraging her exactly where she was. I mean, as you say that, I thought of a story of the safe house that I worked in for a while here in Atlanta. And it was for women coming out of prostitution, and a woman decided to leave. And I remember as she was leaving, we were standing in the parking lot, and she was upset about something, and just wanted to go back. And I took her hand and I was like, we love you and we're for you. And if you decide to come back, the door is open. And she left. And that's something that I had to let her go. But she came back. And one of the things she said was, she was like, those words helped me to come back. But I think just remembering that some may come back, some may not come back. And it's not, I think, what am I trying to say? Maybe removing that weight off of my shoulders, that it's not actually my responsibility to try to convince them to stay, or this is their journey in their life, and I will love them fully while they're in our care, in my care, but trust that ultimately the Lord may bring other people in their lives down the road. Or so I think that is a way that kind of keeps me encouraged, that it's not it's not all on me to do, because, and I think that can actually fall into, I think it's a healthy perspective to say it's not all on me, but it's also, if I try to take it all on me, then I'm trying to become their savior, and I'm not their savior. And so I think just keeping that healthy perspective too.
Rachel, remember that as Grace continues to grow, as a parent of adult children, that is just so vital to know what we are and what we're not. And sometimes that parents can step over in their zeal for the kids to do that. But the Lord has given us that freedom to leave, so that when we come back, it was because we saw the light and we want to come back, a la the prodigal son. And is there anyone else? Yes. Oh yeah, come on up. Oh, okay, Timothy first. Okay, go ahead. Sure.
This might sound kind of derogatory. I promise it's not. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, how do you know they're grateful to, like, God and not you, in a sense? Like, how do you know they're not trying to, like, pay back what you gave them and not, like, what God gave them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That's really perceptive, honestly, to pick up on that. I don't think we know fully a lot of times. And I think sometimes at this stage where there almost can be that mix for them of, we suddenly become the face of showing them Christ. And so I think that, it's hard for me to always even know where their hearts are and do they know. I think that what I can do is do my best to continue to point them to the Lord, and hope and pray and trust that He is going to, because He's actually what's going to sustain them, And so I think that the more that we can point them to Him, obviously the fuller their life will be, but even their better chances of success as far as kind of getting out of that lifestyle. But I think, to your question, I think especially in those beginning stages, we don't actually always know if it's us or the Lord. And I think that it's also something that we have to be careful about. We want to show them the Lord, but we don't want them to feel like they have to accept the Lord in order to receive the love, the care, the help, whatever it might be. That it's not this strings attached type of relationship.
Yeah, so valuable.
That's a good question.
Stella.
Hi.
Hi, Stella.
So like I have a question about the video. So in the video they kind of mentioned like something about the owners like trusting them. Like my question is like, how do those like you guys like missionaries go to there and then gain their trust, and they don't feel like you're like trying to get the girls out or like help them escape?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've actually always been amazed by that, specifically with this organization that you saw the video of. I think that if I were to try to go down on my own, they would not welcome me in. So I think what you see in that video is a direct result of years of labor of that organization building those relationships. And to me, I thought the same thing, that wouldn't the owners find it threatening that they're coming in, but the owners see it as, you're making the girls happy. Like, you're coming in, you're spending time with them. At Christmas time, you bring different treats. And so they kind of look at it from that perspective. And I don't think that they see it necessarily as a threat, even though girls do leave. But I think that, and maybe it's also just kind of the Lord's favor. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I think it's a good question. And I thought the same thing, that they would be totally closed off. And in some other circumstances with some other organizations and settings, I know that they are. But in this case, those owners are open to it. So, yeah.
That's amazing. You have one? Okay. Oh, comment. Okay. Yeah, okay, hold on. Actually, our time is. Okay, Sam. Oh, sorry. What do you? Is it okay? Okay. Okay. Actually, I just. Wow, this time is going by so fast. You realize it's past midnight for Rachel. I'm so sorry. We thank you so much.
No, it's
Thank
fine.
you
It's
so
been
much.
fun. It's been really great.
So final question here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to try to have a little worship and then break up into some groups just to kind of process a little bit real
Yeah.
quick. But the final thing I want to really ask is, okay, now what? From what you can kind of see us, you kind of have an idea of just where I mean, they're not going to Amsterdam or wherever, Bolivia or anywhere. Is what, as far as just from your perspective, what now? I mean, what's our next step?
Yeah. Such a good question. I have a few thoughts. I mean, one, I actually, and Arthur, if you wanted, I could email you this, but I have a few book recommendations. If anyone was interested, that I think would kind of, more than what we're able to get into tonight, just give like a greater picture of kind of this issue. So that's one thing, just to continue to learn. But a second thing that I would say is, you know, this issue of trafficking is definitely not just an issue that exists in other countries. Like, it very much exists all over the world, in your city, in my city. So I think, something that you could think about is looking, and I know that you guys there may be age limitations and things, but if there are organizations where you might be able, we have at the Safe House where I am a day a week, sometimes there are church groups that will come in, not when the women are there, but will clean the house, or do some painting. So there are things, there might be local organizations that you could connect with to kind of look for opportunities of ways to kind of get your foot in the door with serving in some way. Kind of the last thing I would say on that is to this, and not to like make my answer so long, but trafficking and prostitution, as I said before, the lines are blurry. And there are ways, when you see someone who's homeless, especially if it's a woman, there's a good chance that she has been prostituted. So just even in the way that we look at people and we treat people, so that woman could be the trafficked woman in the brothel. So just even kind of making some of those mental shifts, or children who are vulnerable are often a few steps away from being the ones who end up in prostitution or trafficking. So even looking for ways to like serve vulnerable communities with kids, you're preventing some of that. So those are a few things that I would say could be some possible possible steps.
So helpful. I mean, one thing I took from that as well is learning within yourself how to view people correctly when their circumstances look very different than yours. Even just training yourself to be able to look at them as human first, instead of the homeless and the whatever, instead, in learning, and that in itself will bring momentum maybe, and
Yeah.
bring a movement forward within your own life, which then the Lord can lead elsewhere in the future, huh?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
learning how to.
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. I wish we could have you a little longer, but we're gonna give you your sleep back. And Rachel, you don't know how helpful this has been. Yeah, this has been so good. So would you just say thank you, guys?
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you guys. It's been an honor.
Thank you. It's
been
been
an
an honor
honor.
for us. Rachel, we'll touch base later, but thank you.
Okay,
Really
sounds
appreciate
good.
it. Thank
All
you
right.
again. Appreciate
Take
it.
care. Have a good
Bye.
night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.